Hi everybody, my name is Christine and I am trying to read the Constitution a little bit every day until I am done. It is past the 4th of July where at first I thought we'd finish, and now probably not until at least the end of July. I didn't realize that there was so much here to digest. It's not just the reading. I figure, what good does it do to read it if we don't talk about what it really means? Right now we are in the executive branch, and we are in Article 2 is this executive branch. Article 1 was the legislative branch, and we are in Article 2, Section 2. And it starts, "The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officers in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment." Okay, so the first section is that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we know that to be true. And it's an Army, Navy, and militia. We now have a standing armies and etc., Air Force, Marines, all of that. So he is the commander-in-chief, and that means that we, the people, have elected the head of the armed forces because we've elected the president, whereas before it would be like the militia was unto itself, sort of. They're supposed to listen to somebody, but it was a little different back in the day, and armies could turn on you. And you hear nowadays sometimes a country might have a coup, which basically means that's what happened, was that the armies decided they've had enough of the leader, and they arrest the leader or kill the leader or dispose of him or whatever. And because of that, I guess they wanted the president to be the commander-in-chief. And as the commander-in-chief, the president sets strategy, deploys troops, and bears responsibility for them. But only Congress can formally declare war, which is Article 1, Section 8. Unfortunately, we haven't had a real war in a lot of years, and they use really strange terms to say that we're at war when we're not at war, without saying we're at war. Some things that you may want to look at with that is called the Posse Comitatus Act. Comitatus Act. Oh, I can't read my own handwriting. Comitatus Act. Comitatus Act, and the Insurrection Act, which all have to do with war. And if you want to read about that, you can. So the next section says, "He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officers of each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices." So basically, that's his staff, and it is what we call the cabinet nowadays. And there's, I looked it up, there were 15 main cabinet members, and then there's some others, and he gets to say, hey, this is what I want, this is who I want to be in this position. But later on it talks about how it's not just him. The Senate gets involved in it. And he can pardon people who have offenses against the United States, which means federal, only the federal, not state. He cannot pardon state. He can only pardon federal offenses, except in cases of impeachment. And what's really interesting about the pardoning is that it can be at any time. And so right now they're put before Congress, not before Congress, but recently Trump was saying that he wanted his family, he and his family, to not have anything against them either now or after he's not in office anymore. Even though nobody has been arrested or charged with anything, he wants to make sure that they are pardoned, and so he's pardoning them before there's even anything to pardon. I don't know if that went through. I can't remember. But I will look that up and let you know tomorrow. Okay, it says, he shall have the power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. So that means he can make treaties, but the treaties need the senators, 2/3 of the senators to agree with the treaties. And so what has been going on lately is, instead of trying to do that, which can be really difficult, the executive, they have executive guarantee agreements. And they don't need 2/3 of the Senate, but they lack constitutional weight, and they can be reversed by the next president or administration more easily. So although that he has the power to make treaties, sometimes they don't want to do that because it's too difficult when the Senate is opposed to what the president says, and so therefore he'll just do an executive agreement instead. And he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. So here they're saying that not only does he not only can he talk with all of these people in the cabinet to help him make sound decisions, because let's face facts, no one person knows absolutely everything. And so you have these cabinet members who are more in tune with certain aspects of running the United States, and they would have more information, and then they sit down and they talk to the president and says, hey, you know what, this is what's going on here, and this is, how we think you should be looking at things, or here's what you need to look at, and here's a couple different ideas for how you might want to do something with this. And they have to be appointed. They have to be appointed, but with the Senate, with the Senate. The Senate has to help vote, and that's just the 51% majority vote, and that's why when a new president comes in, you hear all about the cabinet members, and it takes a lot of time from them to sit down and they have hearings, and they get to ask questions, and sometimes the people that are being voted on, they're pretty like, oh yeah, this person's a good fit, and other times there doesn't seem to be a good fit, and so there are a lot more questions. And yeah, there's been some controversial ones in the last few years, so it's always interesting TV, that's for sure. Okay, and then the next part says, but the Congress may, by law, vest the appointment of such inferior offices as they think proper, in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. And that basically just means that instead of having everybody who would be in the office of the cabinets having to go through the Senate hearings, it's only the top ones, the top 15 to 25 or so. The rest of them are just appointed, and it keeps the Senate moving because they have other business to attend to. Not that this isn't important, but that, only the top ones are really the most important ones. Okay, and then it says, the president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of the next session. So, well, that's been changed a bit. It used to be that when the Senate was gone, or any of the Congress was gone, they were gone for longer vacations because it took a lot longer to get there, and then they would stay for a certain amount of time and they would leave, and then they would go back home, and it just took so long to get people back. It didn't have airplanes, didn't have trains that traveled everywhere, didn't have automobiles, buses, and the like. And so if something happened, a war broke out or something, and things needed to be decided quickly, the president was given the ability to fill in the spaces so that they can make some decisions quickly. But we don't really need that so much anymore, and it was rarely used to begin with, but it's still there. And I guess there's something that they call gaveling in, and that's when the Senate will, they're not voting on anything, but to make sure that the recess isn't longer than 10 days, they'll go in and they'll just gavel and say, okay, we're in session, and then gavel, we're out of session, so that they can keep from having to have the president replace them for any period of time. So it's just the way it is. And all of this gives the president power, but it also gives the Senate power, so that there's those built-in checks and balances. The president can choose the people to be in his cabinet, but the Senate also has to can hold hearings, and they have to vote and decide whether or not their person gets in. So it's that push and pull again, where they're trying to make sure that no one person gets all of the power, no one section. It's, we got that triangle going on with the executive branch, the Congress or legislative branch, and the judicial branch is next. So, it's all just all that push and pull. And that's all for today, because we're already at almost 15 minutes, and I thank you for listening. And the next one will be the last two sections of Article 2. And I'll see you tomorrow. Like and follow or make comments. Thank you. Bye.